that starting at about age 8, you should change your state of activity for every age that the child is at that time. Goes up to 20 minutes. Translated to me, most of my students are 18 to 22. So about every 20 minutes, I have to change my state. So if I have them come in, I can physically have them do an activity, and again, they just think I'm crazy, it's Dr. Coons again, whatever. So they'll do stuff, they get very excited, but I'm moving them. And then if we go into a discussion, I don't lecture very often, this is unusual for me, but if I'm actually doing stuff like this, then I make sure that about every 20 minutes, which we're getting ready to do, you will do something else. Now, the changing state can go from group discussion. You can do the affinity pair, the affinity diagram, you can do a think, pair, share. If you look at your Bloom's taxonomy, that whole right-hand column are all instructional strategies that involve movement if you do it right. So for my audience, every 20 minutes, I'm doing something different. And a lot of times, if you look at the backgrounds and the historical design development behind the centers in elementary classrooms, it occurred for 2 reasons. One, it was financial, budgetary. We weren't able to hire all the specialist teachers anymore, so the classroom teacher taught everything. And how did you get all of that in one classroom? So we had to create centers. And also, because we began to realize that the kids have to move. So you get them up and you move them to the station, unbeknownst probably to the legislators, they were taking 7 steps, activating the BDN, woke the brain up, created homeostasis, I'm happy, and now the students are absolutely as equipped and prepared as they can be to learn, which is so fun, because that's why we're here. Be great, I mean, again, I teach statistics, it's very interesting, measurement epidemiology. Even in that class, I do all kinds of activities. And we play, we do, because I know for a fact, especially in that class, if I move them every 20 minutes, guess what? Whew, they're going to remember a whole lot more than if they just sat there in statistics for an hour. So I move them all the time. And a lot of them, again, until they get into that class and learn why I do it, they have no clue why I do it. They have fun though. The more they move, the more fun they have, the more they learn. That's just a win-win for everyone. That's a little soapbox, I apologize. What I want to do here is we just want to do a little remember of the brain. And it's going to come into play because when we look at how from the nervous system, which is the brain and all the nerve cells throughout your body, how we learn, it's quite fascinating. Broca is the reading area. I have to look, I apologize. Broca, I'm sorry, is speech. And then Wernicke is the language area. Now, as we travel through the brain, you know that we always travel front to back, regardless of what we do. The signal always travels front to back if it's a normal development, non-developmentally delayed brain. And then we travel typically right to left, which is fascinating. Now, what is fun is when we look at the different hemispheres of the brain, the left hemisphere does all the sequencing in the parts, the right is more of the whole, you already see the language area. Now, let's look at how we learn. The kids are going to see the word cat, and interestingly, it's all literally walking through this part of the brain. So we visually see it, and if you remember, Broca's was seeing it. The word cat comes up, is processed. Look at what passes: motor cortex, sensory cortex. Sensory can be anything. It can be emotions, it can be touching, it can be feeling, doing numbers with pudding, feeling letters in velvet, it doesn't matter. As long as it's coming through the sensory, then we get into here, and it has to go through all this to get to the visual cortex. And then it sees the word cat, can then finally code and comprehend it. But the most exciting thing to me is that in order for it to get here to code it, it has to pass through me. It has to pass through the motor cortex. So what we're realizing is that they will learn best if there's movement, emotion attached because remember it passes through motor and it passes through sensory. So if they're moving and they're having fun, you've opened up a whole gateway pathway for students to learn and to increase their knowledge, which just makes sense. It should be fun. Do you have any questions on that? That's kind of deep. That's a little out there. It's not what you're typically told. And it's amazing, really cool research coming from Harvard. Yes,
I have a question. What does this have to do with motor skill development, maybe? Does the brain, how does that?
Yes.
Because you know you have your younger kids that can do some things, even kindergarten to third grade. So how is that?
We know that there are developmental hierarchies, how students should develop, the normal average student. And for example, they should be able to skip appropriately by 6 years old. And we know you should crawl before you walk, before you run. We know somewhere around 7 to 8, they should be able to figure out how to step opposite and throw. So we do have milestones of physical skill and motor development that we look at. We rely on that heavily at the Roberts Academy because it helps us to diagnose undiagnosed issues. But it also allows me, if I know someone's having issues with reading, well, I know when it comes to movement, I need to increase skipping, I need to increase hopping, and I also need to increase spinning because that helps with the coding process. So the development of the brain is linked in a huge way to the physical development and the skills that the children can show us. And if there is a delay in reading, a delay in math, or a delay in literacy, if you have a well-versed physical education teacher, they're going to be able to look at that student and walk in and tell you, I noticed that Johnny can't skip. Let's talk about the reading scores. And we know they're directly linked.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Why is it, and this just maybe lack of funding or whatever, but
Is the social and emotional status of our students. It can vary daily. It varies daily why. What's raging through them, especially in 3rd through 6th grade. That's the first surge, ladies. We get our power surge. I've been through mine. But you're going to get your amazing power surge. The first power surge for all of us is in elementary school. And that tends to be certain grades that people avoid. It tends to be certain grades that people relish because they love it, they understand it, they get it. But that is the first of hormones that rush through the body. Now, socially and emotionally, what also happens? Some handle it well, others don't. Some don't know what's going on. They don't know what to do. Oh my God, this overwhelming thing is occurring chemically and hormonally inside them. They don't have control over it. So, what I want to do with just that brief introduction, you have to grab something out of your pocket, your backpack, or your purse. And I'm going to be very mindful of our time here. You grab one item. What we're getting ready to do is called connection collections. And then what I need you to do with your item is you can make one of two statements about your item. And remember, this is called connection collections. You can make a statement about how your item links to social development, or you can make a statement about how your item links to the emotional development of our K through 6 children. It can be positive, it can be negative.